What's up, guys? I figured I could make a little quick big bass bash video where I got a little bit of downtime. We are actually out of town restoring some power, so I don't have the baits. Wanted to get this video out sooner, but just didn't have a chance. As far as lake conditions go, water temperature is still in the mid 70s. For once, the big bass bash is actually going to be on a warming trend instead of a cold front, so that could help your fishing. I mean, normally you would say, oh, that's better than a cold front, which yes, it still is, but I think we really need a little bit of cooler weather to get the lake fishing a little bit better. We're getting the cooler nights, the days are getting a little bit shorter, but I still think we need some consistency in that to help the water temperature drop. I think it's supposed to be 90 degrees on Saturday, which is definitely going to keep the water temperatures where they're at. So as far as fishing overall, from what I've heard throughout the lake, it's fishing pretty dang tough, especially for size. You can kind of go through and catch plenty of numbers, but getting the size is a little bit harder. I've been fishing the lower end, the Gravois. We went down to the Full Bridge area and we did okay. We caught tons of fish, but the size again was kind of hard to come by. I've heard up the river it is a little bit better as far as your size goes. So that's pretty typical though with that shallow fishing up on that end than it is kind of on the lower end. Now, with that being said, you can still certainly fish deep and have success too. It seems that it's kind of hit or miss though. You have to kind of find the right area, the right spot. It doesn't seem like they're biting really good consistently, I should say, in deeper water. You kind of might have to sort through some more areas than you would in the shallow. But as far as shad and things go, you're going to find them pretty well everywhere at this point in time. You're going to have some that are all the way in the backs. You're going to have some that are midway. You're going to have plenty that are out on the main lake still. And the number one thing that you want to focus on or pay attention to is the size of those shad. You're going to see some that are little bitty, not very long. You see some that are like moderate size, and then you're going to see the bigger gizzard shad. And that's what I try and look for and try and fish around, are those bigger schools or bigger balls of gizzard shad, because I really think that's what those bigger fish are keen in on. So if you're fishing shallow or you're fishing deep, your baits, they're really kind of just your typical fall junk fishing style. You can throw a lot of different things, but it's actually pretty similar whether you're going to be fishing shallow or deep. It's just depending on where you're throwing it. Of course, you can throw your glide baits because it's a big bass bash and you're just fishing for one fish, so that's good. You're going to have your top water that might come into play a little bit. Of course, you're going to have your jigs, your shaky head worms, things of that nature. Your spinner baits, you might catch some on that too if you get a little bit of wind on some docks and stuff. And chatter baits, any other creature baits, if you want to flip brush hogs or you want to flip the flatter style beavers, whatever, on like a Texas rig, any of that underneath these docks. When you are flipping and stuff, some people have been flipping, catching them off the bottom, but I've been hearing more and more people have been doing a little bit better actually swimming it out from under these floats, swimming it around these docks, whether it's shallow or deep. That seems to maybe be working a little bit better. Now, one thing with the bash is we have so many people and these shallow fish are going to get beat up on. They always do, very quickly. And I think that gets some of those fish that will kind of suspend more or less around the dock, maybe under the float, and you almost have to get them to bite at a certain point because they've seen so many lures. So you need that reaction. So if you're flipping, swimming, anything like that around these docks underneath them, you may want to vary your weights throughout the day, throughout the tournament. It's probably going to change. You might want a slower one at the beginning, 1/4 ounce weight or something like that, or a little bit lighter jig. Maybe by the end of the day or later on in the tournament, you may want to bump that up, 1/2 ounce, 5/8, whatever. Get that bait to fall down very quickly and get that fish to react so he doesn't really have time to think about it. Also, with the shallow fishing, the lake dropped a little bit, and I think some of those fish that had kind of pushed up there shallow and then they dropped the water out beneath them kind of messed them up. They slid out maybe a little bit, or they retreated up like a few docks in the backs of some of these coves and cuts and just hanging out in a little bit deeper water than they sometimes do. Not saying you definitely can't go back in some areas and catch some fish extremely shallow, but it seems like I was doing better with the fish that were extremely shallow and is getting more consistent. I think like maybe even some more fish were coming that way and they dropped that water and it kind of pushed them back out. So keep that in mind if you're fishing shallow and you're going towards the backs, which there's going to be 10 million people towards the backs, and you're really not getting the bites, or even people around you aren't getting bites. Maybe push up just a little bit, you know, like 3/4 of the way back, or go up a little bit, another row of docks or something, and start fishing those a little bit, and you might have a little bit better luck doing that. If you're fishing deep though, I would be focusing on brush, of course, on around secondary points, but also just looking for structure. So looking for spots where you get your bottom hardness changes, you know, from a rock to like a little bit more of a mud, or a rock size change, any of that. And then, you know, if you can have brush around those areas, that's always an additional thing to keep those fish around. And then just looking for shad. If you can find kind of the depth, the zone where the shad are, pay attention if they're higher in the water column, if they're lower in the water column, or if you see schools of shad, you're gonna see a lot of bass suspended around these shad, kind of out in open water even. And you can definitely throw at those and catch some fish. So definitely put your favorite baits on the deck and fish which you have confidence in, because as we all know, after about the first 30 minutes, you're fishing behind somebody else. So you need to make sure that you have confidence in what you're throwing. I do know the Toyota Series was last weekend, I think, in the winter. He said he was fishing deeper docks, closer to main lake. I guess it doesn't necessarily have to be a deep dock, but closer to the main lake. And he was primarily using swim jig or like a chatterbait, some sort of reaction style bait. So that's something to keep in mind, but it seemed that his strategy was to run and gun and kind of pick more specific docks and kind of build on that. So I've got a feeling that it's probably only going to take like a 6.5 or a little bit less maybe to even win this tournament this year. It just seems like the lake is fishing a little bit tough, but you have so many anglers out there. It's just a numbers game, really. People are going to catch big fish regardless of how tough it is, just because the amount of people on the lake. So once we get everything wrapped up here, I'll be back home and be back out on the water. We'll get some more videos for you. Hopefully you guys can cash some checks, and maybe somebody will be lucky enough to bring home the big $100,000 fish. So good luck to you guys, and thanks for watching.